Efendim merhabalar. Hepinize iyi akşamlar diliyorum. Akşamın son oturumuna hoş geldiniz. Günün bütün yorgunluğuna rağmen hala yemeyip içmeyip, odanıza kaçmayıp bu oturumu izlemek üzere salonumuzu teşrif ettiğinizden dolayı ayrıca teşekkürlerimi sunuyorum efendim. Öncelikle bizi yıllardır bu vesileyle buluşturan Liberal Düşünce Topluluğu'na ve organizasyonda emeği geçen dostlara teşekkür ediyorum. Bir gelenek haline aldı. Yıllık olağan Liberal Düşünce Kongresi'nde her yıl bizi buluşturuyor, dostlarla görüşme imkanı sağlıyorlar. Ayrıca gündemimizde yer işgal eden önemli konuları tartışma, fikir alışverişinde bulunma imkanı sağlıyorlar. Bugün akşamın son oturumundayız ve konumuz entelektüeller ve kapitalizm. Konuğumuz yanımda görmüş olduğunuz değerli dostumuz, arkadaşımız Kahan bize entelektüeller ve kapitalizm konusundaki düşüncelerini paylaşacak. Öncelikle şunu sormak isterim. İngilizce konuşmayı takip edebilirim hocam rahatlıkla diyen dostlarımızı bir göreyim mi? İngilizce konuşmayı rahat takip edebilenler. Peki, güzel. Hocam hiç İngilizcem yok maalesef, birilerinin böyle tercüme etmesine fena halde ihtiyacım var diyen arkadaşları göreyim mi? Peki. Elon'la da konuştuk. Şöyle yapacağız. Kendisi önce sunumunu yapacak. Daha sonra bendeniz fakir İngilizcemle kendisinden anlayabildiklerimi ve not edebildiklerimi sizlerle özet mahiyetinde paylaşacağım. Ondan sonra soru cevap faslı. Okay, welcome to the last session of this evening. We are pleased to have our friend Alan here to talk about intellectuals and capitalism. We are going to have you first go your presentation, and then after that maybe a few minutes summary on what I understood from what you say, and then we are going to have our question and answer session. Here's your floor.
Thank you very much. And of course there will be a quiz at the end to make sure that the summary was correct. First of all, I'd like to thank the Association for Liberal Thinking and above all Professor Entellektüeller for inviting me here to speak to you tonight. It's a great honor and a great privilege for me to talk about intellectuals and capitalism. Perhaps we should have called it intellectuals against capitalism or intellectuals versus capitalism. This brief discussion is based on a book I wrote a few years ago called Mind versus Money, the War Between Intellectuals and Capitalism. I put a copy out on the table there. You can look at it after if you're interested. It has two very beautiful pictures on the cover, and the first person who can identify both pictures wins a free copy of the book. So that's another reason to observe it. Let me tell you how I began to be interested in this project. For many years, I taught history at an American university, and many historians came and spoke to us. And they often used the words capitalism, bourgeoisie, and when they used those words, they were never compliments. They were never praise. Sometimes they were neutral, but mostly they were negative. They were insults. You did not want to be described as a capitalist in one of my historian colleagues' discussions. But these people, if none of them were Marxists, there are no more Marxists in the American Academy. Almost none of them were socialists. And if you asked them why they thought capitalism or the bourgeoisie were bad, they didn't really have any kind of answer. They had no kind of theory. It was just natural. And it was natural to all my colleagues to nod their heads. Yes, of course, capitalism is a bad thing. And as I'm sure many of you have experienced, most of our colleagues at the university think this way. And eventually, after being sufficiently annoyed by listening to this for decades, I decided to try to investigate the problem more seriously, and in the end, like a good intellectual, I wrote a book about it. And I was trying to answer 3 questions. First, why are intellectuals more anti-capitalist than other people are? Second, why does it matter? Why does it matter that intellectuals are more anti-capitalist than other people? And finally, what can we do about it? And so that I don't disappoint you too much, I'm least satisfied with my answer as to what we can do about it. That's the hard part. But I think I understand something about why intellectuals are more anti-capitalist than other people and why it matters. And the reason intellectuals are more anti-capitalist than other people is because of who they are, who we are, both as a class and as individuals. So first, some definition. When I say intellectuals are anti-capitalist, what do I mean by intellectual? My short answer is academia and bohemia. That is, professors, writers, artists in general. Or, that's of course a very short answer. I know there was a panel a little bit earlier today on pornography. And there was, I don't know if you discussed the American judicial cases about banning pornography, but Judge Potter Stewart of the American Supreme Court was having to rule on whether some piece of literature was in fact pornography or not, and he said, I can't define pornography, but I know it when I see it. Well, intellectuals are kind of like that. It's hard to define what an intellectual is, but usually you know one when you see one. Or to be more accurate, since now everybody wears jeans, you know one when you hear them talk. We talk in a strange and different way from other ordinary human beings. And the way we talk is one of the markers of an intellectual. I have 3 kinds of markers. Social, linguistic, and psychological. I'm not going to talk about the social marks of what makes people intellectuals. They're fairly simple. What kind of profession do you do? Even more important, what kind of education did you have? And so on. But I will talk more about what kind of language makes it so that as soon as you hear somebody say 3 sentences, you usually know. Intellectual, not intellectual. And an American sociologist named Alvin Gouldner described this language as careful, critical discourse, CCD. What he meant by this is that when intellectuals talk, they never accept anything on authority, and they bring everything, they question everything. That's the role of an intellectual, that's the role of an intellectual's language. Now, of course, this isn't entirely true. If I want to give added weight to my argument as an intellectual, I may cite Plato, I may cite Professor Yela. This may give my arguments added weight or perhaps less weight, depending on your attitude. But in principle, we don't accept anything on authority. It's the authority of reason is the only thing that counts for intellectuals, and we apply reason to everything. No tradition is too sacred to be challenged, no idea too well-founded to be replaced by another. And very quickly you'll understand that the person you're talking to is talking in this way. But even if somebody has the right kind of education, the right kind of job, talks the right kind of language, that doesn't necessarily make them really an intellectual. What's most important, perhaps, along with the 2 others, is the sort of psychological markers that intellectuals bear. Not just the scar of writing a dissertation, that's a big psychological scar, but some of us can overcome that without becoming intellectuals. It's what I call the bohemian attitude. Intellectuals are people who treasure, prize, put above everything else the idea of personal autonomy. Your individual freedom to think about what you want, and in a sense, to do what you want professionally. And in fact, this attitude is crucial to the dislike of capitalism shown by many intellectuals. Because the problem is that too many other people don't seem to care about their autonomy. They're willing to work for a large corporation and do what the boss tells them to do. They're willing to work in a factory and do what the person in charge of the factory tells them to do. Now, of course, intellectuals have different attitudes towards these people. We can pity the factory worker and say it's not his fault he works in a factory, it's because he's oppressed, he should make a revolution and take over the factory and run it himself. He doesn't want to run it himself, but we don't care. He ought to want to run it himself. Because we want to run our lives, everybody else should be the same way. And of course, when our best students go off and go to work for a bank or an insurance company, well, they have given up their autonomy in a different way. In America, in England, in France, there's a special phrase for this. We say of such people, our best students, that they have sold out. They have somehow sold their soul in return for a large sum of money. What have they sold? They sold their autonomy. They're willing to do something that's not really what they want to do. I don't know if the phrase sold out has any Turkish equivalent. You can let me know afterwards. Yeah. Good. And so, from an intellectual's point of view, and I find various people who actually said something like this, everybody else is enslaved. Either forced into slavery because they're poor, or choosing to be enslaved because they've been paid enough money. They've sold out. Because we have a bohemian attitude of that autonomy is so important that we think everyone else ought to share. Even that wouldn't matter if we didn't combine it with what I call the moral voice. We like to preach, even though we're not priests. Intellectuals are characterized by this moral voice, both as individuals, and now I'll move to discussing intellectuals not just in an individual way, but as a class. Intellectuals often act as a kind of secular clergy. This is an old idea in describing intellectuals. Intellectuals like to be a sort of social conscience. The conscience of the nation, the conscience of a class. Think of the intellectuals as the consciousness of the proletariat and communist ideology, as the conscience of France or of Turkey or of the United States, as the conscience sometimes of a particular minority group, or even as the conscience of the entire world. Intellectuals like to be environmentalists and speak in the name of all the trees of all the universe. It's a way of adopting this moral voice and making it heard. It's the kind of role that throughout history, priests, imams, rabbis, and so on have typically filled. And today, to a large extent, intellectuals act as a secular clergy filling that role. But they do it in a peculiar manner because they're not just preachers. Intellectuals are, I think, the world's first accidental aristocracy. What do I mean by this? Well, here I rely on my hero, Alexis de Tocqueville, for defining what it is to be an aristocrat. And Tocqueville says that aristocrats, nobles, have a certain attitude towards work. And he writes, in aristocracies, it's not work which is despised, but work with an idea to profit. Work is glorious when inspired by ambition or virtue. The notion of profit is distinct from that of work. The two may go together in fact, but tradition denies that. In democratic societies, work and profit are always visibly united. And as the desire for prosperity is universal, all see clearly that it is profit which, if not wholly, then at least partially, makes them work. Well, intellectuals deny that. I'm sure that if you went around the average academic department and asked people, did you become a professor to make money? Everybody in the room would say, no, of course not. If I wanted to make money, I would have done this, I would have done that, I would have done the other thing. We deny that we work for money. And we are probably the only people in our society, with the possible exception of the real clergy, who denies that we work for money. It is a classic aristocratic attitude. And since work is a very important part of everyone's identity, the fact that we deny that we work for money makes us truly, in a certain sense, aristocrats compared to everybody else. At least in the sort of contempt that we have for the common people. They work for money. I work for glory or ambition or virtue or whatever other reason makes you write your articles or your books or teach your classes, because it's certainly not money. This, of course, does not prevent us from going to the chair and asking for a raise. But that's not why we do what we do. We just think that this should happen anyway. So we have these aristocratic attitudes, but yet we never set out to be an aristocracy. We're an elite. Aristocrats are supposed to be an elite, but we're very uncomfortable about that. If you go around the same room, do you work for money? No. Are you members of an elite? Oh, of course not. Very few, a few might say yes, but most of us are very embarrassed at the idea that we're better than other people, or even really different than other people. Most aristocrats are proud of being aristocrats. They're proud of being the duke of what have you, but not us. And we're not democratic in another sense as well. Intellectuals have made many foolish prophecies that turned out to be wrong. But one prophecy none of us has ever been foolish enough to make. No intellectual has ever said, one day all the world will be intellectuals. We all know that is not going to happen. We are a permanent minority. And that too puts us in an aristocratic position. Aristocrats are also a minority. They can never be the majority, because if they are, it's not an aristocracy anymore, right? But we're uncomfortable about this. We're different from other people. We want to be different. We value our autonomy, but we're embarrassed about being different. And so you get intellectuals writing really stupid things, like the American great novelist Norman Mailer, who wrote a book called White Nigger, in which he says, I wished I was black so that I could be a persecuted poor person. And you have intellectuals who are well off, have expensive tastes, and join the Communist Party. Because that way they can join themselves to the proletariat. They can identify with the majority. We do all kinds of strange things because we're so uncomfortable with how different that we are. And that leads us to many strange and often very dangerous places. Now, there is a very obvious objection to everything I've said up to now. If intellectuals are this permanently alienated minority that cares so much about autonomy and is so anti-capitalist, well, what about Adam Smith? What about David Hume? What about Montesquieu? The fact is that there is what I call, or was rather what I call, a honeymoon period, right? The honeymoon is the period when you're first married, when you're wandering around, seeing beautiful things, and going to bed a lot. Well, there was a period like that between intellectuals and capitalism. And it occurred, very roughly speaking, between around 1700 and around 1830, when a lot of intellectuals,
Between what again?
1700 and 1830, very broadly, is a period when a lot of intellectuals like capitalism. And the reason why they did is going to require me to digress a little bit, to go a little bit off my subject, but it's an important objection. I want to deal with it right away. One of the ways you become an intellectual is by being educated in a certain way. You do a lot of reading. I don't care what your subject is. And in the course of that reading, particularly if you're a European or American intellectual, you absorb certain attitudes from whatever kind of literature you're reading because it's there, whether it's novels, histories, social theory, it doesn't matter. And these attitudes I call the three don'ts, the three do nots. And the first don't is don't make money, just have it. In other words, we should all inherit large sums of money, and that's good, but it's bad if we spend our time actually making it, because then we'll be involved in capitalism and sell our souls, etc., etc., etc. And this is a very old set of attitudes. You find it in Plato and Aristotle. It's the Greek, Roman, classical tradition that filters its way down to the present. But that's not the only sort of intellectual origin of anti-capitalism among intellectuals. There's second don't as well. And the second don't is don't have money, give it all to the poor. And this you may be somewhat exempt from because you don't have a Catholic tradition in Turkey. But the medieval Catholic ideal was not simply it's bad to be rich, but it's good to be poor. You should give all your money away. You should have nothing. A good monk, nun, priest owns nothing. And if you have money, therefore, you're not the best person you could be. A really good person has no money at all. And last but not least, beginning around the time of the honeymoon, in the 18th century, we have the third democratic don't. Don't have or make more money than others do. It's not fair. It might even be okay to have a lot of money if everybody had a lot of money. But everybody should basically have about the same amount because we're all equal, after all. And I recently discovered from Professor Yale's account of his class that Turkish students too seem to share this attitude that being rich, having more money than others, is not fair. It must be the result of cheating or stealing or something of this sort. So, in the 18th century, the third don't, it's not right to have more money than other people, is just really being formulated. And at the beginning, people like Adam Smith thought that capitalism was a project for making people equal. If you read Smith, if you read Hume, if you read Montesquieu, they say, look, before now in the world, money basically came from owning land. There's only a certain amount of land. Every bit of land is owned by somebody. Most of it is owned by very few people. If I have more land, that means you have less. The economy is a zero-sum game, and some people will always be on top. But if we have capitalism, if we have trade, if we have industry, if we have commerce, well now, it's not a zero-sum game. I can make money, and you can make money. We can both become richer. And it's easy to have a monopoly of land ownership. It's much harder, though not impossible, to have a monopoly of industry and trade and so on. So that capitalism was a force for making the world more equal. And that was, if you read the arguments of Smith, Montesquieu, Hume, and many others, you will find that argument made at one point or another. The market makes for equality. Unfortunately, as you all know, if you stood up in your classroom today and said, if you want an egalitarian society, you need a free market, well, in France, my students laugh at me. Here they might be very polite, but they won't believe you. So that was the origin of the honeymoon. I don't have time to explain why the honeymoon ended with a very nasty divorce, but it did. I have a chapter called How Capitalism Lost the Struggle Over Character, right? There's a time in most European countries when calling somebody a bourgeois is a great compliment. They're moral, they're hardworking, they're a good person, they are freer than other people, etc., etc., etc. Once we get to the late 19th century, bourgeois is an insult in every European language, for most people. If you read the novels, as I've done, the further you get in the 19th century, the more unpopular the bourgeois is, and the capitalist, and so on. And of course, it's not just the novelists who assault the character of capitalism. Again, as we move into the late 19th, early 20th century, we have many academic assaults on capitalists, theories of how we can replace capitalism by a better economic system, usually some form of socialism. In the beginning, there was Marx. And there's a reason for this, too. If you think about it, there are many incidents, for example, in the Bible, where people get in trouble because they want to see God. People like to have visible idols that they can worship. Well, capitalism, as Adam Smith tells us, is about the invisible hand. You can't see it working. People don't like having their lives run either by an invisible God or an invisible hand. They much prefer to see them. And so people, especially intellectuals, who are wedded to reason, don't like an authority they can't see, they can't touch, they can't predict. And the market is an authority that you can't see, you can't touch, you can't predict, and you can't even argue with it. It's always right. What could be worse from an intellectual perspective? And so intellectuals create all kinds of hands that they can see, and ideally that they think they can control. Planned economies is the most obvious example. But there are many ways in which intellectuals, following very human instincts, intellectuals aren't all the people who build idols. All kinds of people build idols. But intellectuals, therefore, create economic systems that they think they can see, they can touch, and they can, above all, control. So, I will rapidly come to a conclusion here as fast as I can. Why does it matter? Why do we care if intellectuals don't like capitalism? After all, university professors aren't that important anyway, neither are photographers, and so on. Well, this question is easy. You look at the history of the Western world, for that matter, of the Asian world in the 20th century, and you see why this matters. Fascism, communism, less disastrous but not so good, the New Deal, social Catholicism, all these movements that have resulted in millions and millions and millions of dead people, of dead human beings, have been created and led by intellectuals. From Mao in China to Hitler or Lenin and so on. And even the less radical versions, like the New Deal or the social Catholic movements, again, to a large extent, created and run by intellectuals. So, I can't explain to you exactly the mechanism for how this happens, but yes, it does seem to matter what intellectuals think about capitalism, and it still matters. Communism is dead. Fascism is dead. But we live in a world with a strong anti-globalization movement, a strong green movement, even from what little I've read of it, but some aspects of Salafist thought that are all radically anti-capitalist, that blame the world's economic, social, environmental, spiritual ills on capitalism. And if those movements are not terribly important now, as soon as the opportunity comes, intellectuals will jump in front of them to lead them. I was in France in 2008 when the financial crisis hit the world, and if you looked at the covers of all the magazines, you saw headlines something like, "Is this the end of capitalism? The death of capitalism." And if you read the first couple of sentences, it was clear. The author wasn't just stating this as a fact. The author loved the idea that this was the death of capitalism. There are still many intellectuals, not just French ones, who are out there ready and waiting to join the next revolutionary party, whatever it is. And believe me, they almost don't care what it is. Any stick will do as long as capitalism is the animal that you're beating. So, my last point here, and I confess my weakest point. What can we do about this? If I'm right about the kinds of people intellectuals are as a group and as a class, many of them, besides the few wonderful and exceptions that are all in the room here tonight, many of them will always hate capitalism and capitalists. So, is the world hopelessly doomed to more bloody and failed revolutions? No, I don't think the world is doomed. We're never going to make the majority of our colleagues love capitalism. But what we can hope for is a French word that is passed into English. What we can hope for is détente, a relaxation of tensions. Instead of trying to kill your enemy, when you can manage to say, hello, how are you, when you meet in the street, even if you don't like them. A relaxed relationship. Up to now, I'm going to read you a brief quote from a novel. This was supposed to describe the rich and the poor, but for me it describes intellectuals and businessmen. Two nations, between whom there is no intercourse and no sympathy, who are as ignorant of each other's habits, thoughts, and feelings as if they dwelt in different zones or inhabited different planets, who are formed by a different breeding, are fed by a different food, are ordered by different manners, and are not governed by the same laws. And throughout the West, intellectuals and capitalists, intellectuals and businessmen are two nations in every country that I've ever lived in or ever read about. But it doesn't have to be that way. What we want to do is make intellectuals not lovers of capitalism, I think that's too much to hope for, but a loyal opposition. Let me give you an example. Once upon a time, say in 1800 or 1850, everybody thought that lawyers were natural revolutionaries. If you look at the history of the time, the English Revolution, the American Revolution, the French Revolution, the revolutions of 1848, they're all led by lawyers. And Tocqueville writes about this. He says, why are they all lawyers? Advocates, yes. He says, why are lawyers revolutionaries? Because lawyers are actually the people who ought to be running your government, and they were kept out of government by various aristocratic arrangements. Once you give lawyers the kind of influence they ought to have in society, instead of becoming revolutionaries, they become conservatives. They become people who want to help, who want to make improvements, who may want to make changes, but they don't want to make a revolution. That's my goal for intellectuals. Intellectuals, the way they are, we're going to be critical of any society you ever put us in. And that's good, because societies need criticism. But we don't have to try to destroy the society that we're criticizing. We can become a loyal opposition. Just as in the parliament, the minority party, at least in theory, doesn't want to destroy the Constitution, they just want to take their turn running things. And the way we do this is we give intellectuals their proper role, which is not to run things. We're very bad at that. Certainly not to run an economy, not even to run a government. What we're good at is what we've been trained to do. We're good at careful critical discourse, and we're good at what I call moral culture. What do I mean by that? Two things, consumer culture and moral culture. Consumer culture is you give people what they want, whatever they want, and the market is very good at that. You want bread, we'll give you bread. You want this kind of clothing, we'll give you this kind of clothing. You want this kind of car, you get this kind of car. But it's not the business of the market to say, well, what should you want? What ought you to want? The market is great at providing bread to people, but as the saying goes, people don't live by bread alone. They want something else. You give them freedom, and they ask, well, freedom for what? You don't want to tell them what to do, because then they're not free anymore. But you have to discuss what for. You have to talk about what people should want. And that's what intellectuals can do, should do. And if society accepts that that's what intellectuals can offer, moral culture, perhaps intellectuals will be a little bit more happy with capitalism. It's because there's two sides to this problem. My book's only about one side. Intellectuals often despise people who make money. And the people who make money often despise us. Both of these are bad things. We need to bridge this gap between the two nations with the aid of some translation, with the aid of some more acceptance on both sides. We can accept that some people want to make money, not books, and they can accept that some people want to make books and not money. In short, what I hope to see one day, probably not anytime soon, is that we should be happy writing our books and our newspaper columns and teaching our classes, and stop trying to make a revolution against the most successful economic system in the history of the world. That in itself would be a great revolution, and one that instead of killing millions of people might save millions of lives. So in that hope, I wrote my book, and they put the pretty pictures on it. Thank you for listening to my English. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Well, you said a lot of things, and I'm in a difficult position now. How I am going to translate it into my colleagues. Evet değerli dostlar, Alan bize entelektüellerin neden kapitalizmle barışık olmadıklarını, pek çoğunun neden esaslı bir kapitalizm düşmanı olduklarını kendi perspektifinden paylaşmaya çalıştı, izah etti. Ben de ara ara bir taraftan kendisini dinlermiş gibi yaparken bir taraftan da not almaya çalıştım ki lazım olunca sizlerle paylaşayım diye. Efendim, bu konuyla ilgisinin başlangıcını üniversite yıllarına götürdü. Dedi ki, hemen her tarihçi hocamız kapitalizmden ve burjuva sınıfından övgüyle değil, sövgüyle bahsederdi. Eleştiri ve hakaretamiz bir içerikle kullanırdı bu kelimeleri. Ben de merak ettim ya niye bu iş böyle falan diye. Oralardan başlayan ilgisiyle bu konuyla daha yakından ilgilenip bir görüş geliştirdiğini söylüyor. Diyor ki, hemen hiçbir entelektüel ya da entelektüellerin büyük çoğunluğu kapitalizmle barışık değil. Peki, kapitalizmle barışık olmayan insanların hepsi Marksist mi? Hayır değil. Amerika'da fiilen akademik camiada ben Marksistim diyen insan yok denecek kadar az. Nesilleri kesildi sayılır. Sosyalistim, Marksistim diye dolaşan hoca yok gibi bir şey. Ama buna rağmen entelektüellerin büyük çoğunluğu kapitalizmle araları iyi değil. Hasmane bir tutum içerisindeler. Acaba niye? Diyor ve 3 soruyu bu çerçevede kritik soru olarak gündeme getiriyor. Bir tanesi, neden acaba entelektüeller ötekilerden daha fazla kapitalizm düşmanı? Toplumda bir sürü başka insan da var. Ama işlerinde en çok kapitalizmle barışık olmayan, düşmanca ilişkileri olanlar entelektüeller. Neden acaba ötekilerden daha antikapitalist entelektüeller? Bir. İkincisi, bu konu niye önemli? Üçüncüsü, acaba biz bu konuda ne yapabiliriz? Entelektüellerle kapitalizmin ilişkilerini daha dostane hale getirebilmek için bizim yapabileceğimiz bir şey var mı? Peki, birinci sorudan başladık. Kim bu entelektüel dediğiniz vatandaş kim? Ne yapar, ne düşünür? Hem bir sınıf olarak hem de bir birey olarak entelektüellerde gözlemlenen belli davranış kalıplarına değindi. sosyal, dilsel, linguistik ve psikolojik boyutları olan bir mesele bu dedi. Bu sorunun 3 boyutlu cevabı var. Entelektüeller hemen her zaman CCD olarak özetledi. Careful Critical Discourse. Yani dikkatli eleştirel söylem geliştiren insanlar bunlar. Eleştirirler. Kolay kolay hiçbir şeyi beğenmezler. Sürekli eleştirel bir dil kullanırlar. Biz her şeye karşıyız deriz ya, biz zaman zaman böyle popüler dilde. Adeta her şeye karşı bir insanlar sınıfı bunlar. Pek beğenmezler. Eleştirel dil onlar için her zaman ön plandadır, baskındır. Kutsalları yoktur. Dolayısıyla toplumun öteki kesimlerindeki insanlar kutsallarına saygıdan dolayı daha dikkatli bir kullanma ihtiyacı duyarken bu arkadaşların kutsalları olmadığı için Allah ne verdiyse işlerinden geldiği gibi pavas pandaras küfürlü konuşmaktan çekinmezler. Bohem tavrı içerisindeler. Önemli bir kısmı. Bohem yaşayış tarzı, düşünce tarzı falan. Kişisel özelliklerine çok düşkündürler. Fena halde bağımsızlıklarına, özelliklerine düşkün oldukları için patrondan emir almayı sevmezler. Öğrencilerinin önemli bir kısmının kendilerinden ders aldıktan sonra mezun olup da bir bankaya, bir şirkete girip de orada patronlardan emir almaya başladıklarını görünce oğlum siz satıldınız mı diye de eleştirirler bunları. O satılmışlık lafı var ya bizde Türkçedeki, onun karşılığı aşağı yukarı bu. Sold out yani. Paraya kendini sattın lan üçkağıtçı, böyle bir şey. Sold their soul for money. Ruhunu paraya sattı. Aynen ifadeyi böyle kullanıyor. Bizde adam satılmış abi deriz. Kendini para için şöyle yaptı, böyle yaptı. Kaç kuruş aldın ondan beyefendi falan diye. Hatırlar basında falan popüler tartışmalarda zaman zaman duyduğunuz laflar bunlar. Bizim entelektüeller kendi öğrencilerini böyle eleştirirler. Ulan yetiştirdik adamı, gittik kendisini paraya sattı falan diye. Peki herkesin de öyle olması gerektiğini düşünürler. Kendilerinin adeta düşünce tarzının esas olduğunu, doğru olduğunu, başkalarının da öyle düşünmesi gerektiğine dair bir inançları da var. Peki bunlara seküler vaazlar diyebiliriz diyor. Tamam mı? Moral, manevi, ahlaki, kendilerince bir takım doğrular var. O doğruları konusunda vatandaşa, kitleye, topluma, öğrencilerine entelektüel vaazlar vermeyi severler. Bunlara laik vaazlar demek mümkündür diyor. Aristokrasi tavrı ile entelektüeller arasında bir paralellik ve zıtlık ilişkisine değindi. Gerçekte aristokrat insan para için çalışmayı, para kazanmayı önemser. Bu onun gözünde normal bir şeydir, meşru bir şeydir. Ama bizim accidental aristokrasi dediği böyle arızi aristokrat, böyle tesadüfi aristokratlar para için iş yapmamakla övünürler. Parayı sevmezler. Normal, gerçek anlamdaki aristokrasinin aksine bunlar ben mi? Para ha, ben ha, sakın, asla, olur mu? Gibi bir tavır içerisindeler diyor. Hiçbir profesör örneğin para için bu işi yapıyorum demez diyor. Glory, ambition, virtue, faziletler için, erdemler için, tutkularımdan dolayı, meslek aşkımdan dolayı, bu mesleğe tutkumdan dolayı bu işi yapıyorum kardeş. Para için yapıyorsam namerdim tavrı içerisindeler diyor. Şimdi burada bir parantez açayım. Valla doğrusunu isterseniz ben bir profesör olarak bu işi para için yapmadığımı hem de samimiyetle söyleyebilirim. Çünkü ben meslek kariyerime İş Bankası Genel Müdürlüğü'nde uzman olarak başladım. Türkiye İstatistik Kurumu'ndaki kısa bir maceramı saymıyorum. O gün İş Bankası'na beraber girdiğimiz ODTÜ İktisat bölümünden sınıf arkadaşım bugün İş Bankası Genel Müdürü. Meslekten pek çok arkadaş var. Bankacılık sektöründe tepe yönetici durumdalar. Emin olun benim en az 5 katım gelirleri var. Ama ben pişman mıyım o yoldan bu yola, akademiye intisap ettiğime? Hayır değil. Gerçekten de bu mesleğin bana kattığı bazı değerler veya ardında bırakacağım bazı değerli şeyler var ki inanıyorum. Paradan daha değil. Kaldı ki beni de bırakın, genel olarak Türkiye'de şu anda üniversite profesörlerinin, doçentlerin, akademisyenlerinin maaşı daire başkanlarının bile maaşının altında kalan rezalet bir durum. Bence AK Parti hükümetinin onca olumlu icraatına rağmen
tebrik veriyor,
hiç onca icraatına rağmen ya ilmin değerini kavrayamadıkları için, çok açık arkadaşlar, hiç lafını çekilen bir insan değilim ben. pek çok hizmet yapmalarına rağmen bu ülkeye hiç yapmadıkları, ihmal ettikleri ve yanlış yaptıkları bir şey üniversiteyi ihmal etmektir. İlmin ve ilim adamının değerini idrak konusunda gösterdikleri yetersizliktir maalesef. Eğer bu konuda iyi bir şeyler yapmazlarsa 2023 vizyonuna ulaşmak da o kadar kolay değil. Türkiye teknolojide sıçrama yapacaksa bunu cevherlerle ve beyin gücüyle yapacak. O da üniversiteden mezun olan en zeki insanların tekrar üniversiteye gelmesiyle mümkün. Şu anda I will give some explanation, especially. I added something to you. Okay. Peki. Arkadaşlar bitirelim.
I was about to say, I thought that the Turkish version was clearly much better.
Thank you. That's very nice of you. Okay. Entelektüel arkadaşlar der ki, entelektüellerin yaptıkları envai çeşit kehanet var. Bunların hemen hiçbirini tutmadı ama bir kehanetleri tuttu. Entelektüeller toplumun hiçbir zaman tamamının veya çoğunun entelektüel olmayacağına dair bir kehanetleri var. Bu doğru diyor. Yani toplumun hiçbir zaman çoğunluğu entelektüel olmayacak. Bu hiçbir zaman böyle olmadı. Bundan sonra da böyle olmayacak. Güzel. Hali vakti yerinde bir entelektüel. Aslında adam proletarya falan değil. Açlıktan nefesi kokan birisi, emekçi değil bu adam. Hali vakti yerinde ama gider Komünist Parti'ye üye olmayı sever. Emekçi kardeşlerle dayanışma. Kendisini bir anlamda böyle onlarla beraber aynı grubun parçasıymış gibi görür, öyle lanse eder. Böyle bir tavrı var. Peki, entelektüellerle kapitalizm arasında dostluk ilişkisinin adeta balayının yaşandığı bir dönem var der. Adam Smith'in, David Hume'un ve Montesquieu'nun yaşadığı dönemlerde 1700'lerden 1830'lara kadar o dönemde entelektüeller kapitalizm düşmanı değillerdi. Kapitalizm dostu olmayı övünerek söylerlerdi. Onların gözünde kapitalizm modern çağın entelektüelleriyle olan ilişkiden çok daha farklıydı der. Bunların yapmadıkları, don't dediği, benimsemedikleri 3 şey vardı. Bir tanesi, don't make money, just have it. Para kazanmak için uğraşma, para kazanma ama sahibi ol. Böyle bir şeyleri yoktu. Hani bizim modern dönem entelektüelleri para kazanmak için uğraşmayı sevmez, proletaryanın avukatlığını yapar ama bu arada kendisinin hali vakti yerinde olmasından da, patronların holdinglerinde çalışmaktan da filan gocunmazlar. Öyle bir durum, bunlarda o tutarsızlık yoktu diyor. 2, don't have money, give it to the poor. O zamanlar yani böyle sahip olduğun parayı cebinde, yastık altında, şurada tutma, bunu başkalarıyla paylaş. Ta o Hristiyanlıktan, kilisedeki görevlilerin tavrı da böyleydi. Adeta parasız olmak, sahip olduğunu başkalarına vermek bir erdem kabul edilirdi. 18. yüzyılın sonlarına doğru o balayı ilişkisi biterken şu 3. noktayı vurur. Don't make more money than others. Başkalarından daha fazla paraya sahip olmana gerek yok. Yani illa çok para kazanmakla çok marifet değil. Öyle bir şey vardı, anlayışları. Peki, onların gözünde kapitalizmi olumlu bir şey yapan şu önemli noktaydı. Daha önceki dönem tarım toplumuydu. Tarım toplumunda toprağın sahipleri belliydi. Bir toprak sahibinin ancak elinden biraz alırsanız sizin de mülkünüz, varlığınız olurdu. Dolayısıyla ekonomi bu anlamda sıfır toplamlı bir oyun gibiydi. Birinin zenginleşmesi ancak öbürünün yoksullaşması pahasına olabilirdi. Oysa kapitalizm dediğimiz şey tamamen başka bir dünya yarattı. Ekonomi artık sıfır toplamlı bir oyun değil. Esasen üretim faaliyetiyle, iş bölümüyle, uzmanlaşmayla ekonomi birinin zenginleşmesi başkasını fakirleştirmeden de yapılabilen bir şey. Zenginlik artan bir şey. Bundan dolayı entelektüellerin kapitalizmde bir sorunu yok idi. Ama Marx'ın etkisiyle, o geleneğin etkisiyle daha sonra bu balayı bitti. Artık entelektüeller müzmin bir kapitalizm hasmı, düşmanı haline geldiler. Piyasanın eşitleştirici rolüne inanırlardı balayı dönemindeki entelektüeller, ekonomistler. Oysa bugün bunu örneğin Fransa'da söylesem bana gülerler, inanmazlar. Piyasanın eşitleştirici olduğuna sen bunu söylüyorsun, hadi be derler. Devletin eşitleştirici rolüne inanır bu arkadaşlar. Piyasanın eşitleştirici rolüne değil diyor. Bugünkü durumu belirtirken bitiriyorum. Başlarda burjuva bir övgüyken, iltifat idiyken 19. yüzyılda bu bir hakaret terimi haline geldi. Bunda Marx'ın çok önemli bir rolü var. Kapitalizme yüklediği anlam o günkü dünyadaki tasvir ettiği manzara aynen bugünkü dünyaya taşındı ve bu bir artık burjuva denince, kapitalizm denince bu bir burjuva terimi hakaret olarak algılanan bir şey oldu. Invisible God, invisible hand. Görünmez Tanrı, görünmez el. Adam Smith'in malum meşhur kavramıdır görünmezler. Piyasanın ve fiyatların esasen insanlar kendi çıkarları peşinde koşarlarken doğal olarak toplumun refahına ve toplum menfaatine hizmet ettiren bir güçten, bir düzenekten bahseder. Bu görünmez eldir. Bu arada görünmez kalbi okuyanlar bu konuyu daha ayrıntılı bilirler. Görünmez Tanrı'yla görünmez kalp, görünmez el birbiriyle uyumlu soyut kavramlar. Oysa entelektüeller planlayabilecekleri, dokunabilecekleri, evirip çevirebilecekleri şeyleri severler. Ondan dolayı da böyle bir hasmane tutum geliştirdiler der. Krizler esasen Lenin, Mao, Hitler'in yol açtığı krizler dahil, Amerika'daki New Deal çabaları dahil, entelektüellerin akıl hocalığında ve yönlendirmesinde meydana gelmiş facialardır diyor. Önemli bir nokta bence. Bugün antik küreselciler, küreselleşme karşıtları, yeşilciler, yeşil hareketler bütün günahları, bugünkü dünyadaki bütün sorunları kapitalizme yükleyerek rahatlıyorlar. Onlar için işin izahı, kolay izah yolu bütün bu sorunların kapitalizm tarafından yaratıldığı anlayışıdır der. 2008-2009 krizinde heyecanlandılar. Kapitalizm ölüyor mu? Kapitalizmin sonu geldi mi? Dediler. Ama öyle bir şey olmadı diyor. Şunu söylüyorum, meslektaşların çoğu sevsek de sevmesek de kapitalizmle pek araları iyi olmayacak, sevmeyecekler. Peki ne yapabiliriz? Relaxation of tensions dedi, yani gerilimi düşürebiliriz, tansiyonu biraz azaltabiliriz. İş dünyasıyla, piyasayla entelektüeller arasındaki bu gerilimi bizler düşürebiliriz. Nasıl yapabiliriz bunu? Aynen vaktiyle Fransız devrimine, dünyadaki birçok devrimci harekete öncülük eden avukatlara, modern dünyada kendilerine uygun başka roller verdiğiniz zaman nasıl ki o sistemin en büyük koruyucusu, muhafazakarları haline geldilerse diyor, entelektüellere de toplumda oynayabilecekleri roller, yapıcı roller verirsek o zaman piyasa ve iş adamı karşıtlığını azaltabiliriz, daha yönetilebilir hale getirebiliriz diyor. Entelektüellerle iş adamlarını bu anlamda barıştırmanın yollarına bakabiliriz. Bazıları kitap sever, efendim parayı sevmez, bazıları para sever, kitabı sevmez. Biz bunlar arasında bir denge kurmanın yollarına bakmalıyız dedi. Ben de kendisinden benim anladıklarım aynen böyle söylememiş olabilir. Her tarif bir tahriftir diyor Cemil Meriç. Müthiş. Her tarif bir tahriftir. Her tercüme aslında konuşmacının ya da yazarın ne söylediğinden ziyade sizin ondan ne anladığınızdır. Acizane ben kendisinden bunları anladım. Sürçülisanım varsa affola, teşekkür ediyorum.
Tayyip Erdoğan hariç çok güzel bir hocam. Çeviri çok orijinaldi yani. Tayyip Erdoğan kısmı hariç.
Evet. Okay, let me give a brief explanation. You said, okay, professors say, are you doing this job for money? No, no way, they say. This is an exception. Turkish professors, believe me, are earning money even less than the middle size, very ordinary person in a company, in a small size company. That means the Turkish government, unfortunately, do not give enough importance to the income level of professors right now, for the time being. That's why, as a professor, I told my colleagues here, I am not doing this job for money because I started, okay, in the beginning, I started after graduation of my university, I started my career at a bank, the largest commercial bank of Turkey. Now, my classmate, whom I started the career at the same department of the same bank, now he is the top manager, CEO of the largest commercial bank of Turkey. I am sure he is making at least 5 times greater than me. That's what. Yet I am not, say, okay, I wish I didn't quit my banking career. I don't say that. Even I am doing very little money, I am happy with what I am doing with this career, with glory, with, whatever you say. Okay, thank you very much. Sorularımız var mı arkadaşlar? Sorular. Questions.
Siz cevap
Any questions and criticisms? Evet arkadaşlar orada. Now questions are coming. Yes.
Go ahead.
İngilizce mi yapalım hocam? Türkçe mi? Fark eder mi?
İngilizce yapabiliyorsan yap, çok daha iyi olur. Aradan beni kaldırmış olur, aracıyı çekmiş olursun.
Thank you, Dr. Alan
Kahan.
and Kahan. I am happy hearing that intellectuals in the United States looks like the intellectuals in Turkey. Like you hear